and they're like, what is
Never heard
this?
of sugar in your soil.
Okay, so most of the time, the people
Control
that
your
they're
emotions,
that
not
they've
break
been
under pressure.
painted
All this
is
stuff is
We are one of the very few
meditating,
businesses, organizations
You know.
where you
So,
can shop
really great
online.
tips already off the bat, and we're just starting.
Go to Top Box.
Hello and welcome to Healthier Habits, a podcast that discusses challenges and solutions when it comes to health and wellness, as well as connecting you to some local resources in Chicago. My name is Cassandra Zumba.
And I am Yakwache and will be your host. We are the policy, system, and environmental coordinators here at the Chicago Partnership for Health Promotion, a program from the Office of Community Engagement and Neighborhood Health Partnerships at UIC. Our guest today, Kathryn Bernstein, she/her, is the Program Director for Food Systems and Nutrition Policy with the Illinois Public Health Institute. IPHI is an Illinois-based nonprofit organization that works to mobilize stakeholders, catalyze partnerships, and lead action to improve public health system to maximize health equity, and quality of life for people and communities. Within her role at IPHI, Kathryn works to increase access to nourishing foods in the workplaces and community spaces by overseeing the food and nutrition strategies, including organizational food service guideline policies and the Illinois State Physical Activity and Nutrition Program cooperative agreements with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Kathryn is involved in food system, legislative policy, and coalition development initiatives. Hello, Kathryn. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you all doing?
Good.
Good. Today's a nice day, better than the last few days that we had here in the city.
Low bar.
Honestly. How did it go for you with all these storms?
It was okay. Yeah, it was okay. I'm fortunate, didn't have any damage. I'm in a big, very structurally sound building. So survived.
That's great to hear. Well, thank you again for being here and joining us. To get started, some people here in the organization already know you. We haven't had the pleasure before to meet you. But if you can tell us, what is your experience or how are you connected to CPHP?
Yeah, I had the pleasure of working at cphp for just shy of a year. I'm terrible with dates, so do not ask me what year it was, but maybe it was about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that. I was a health education specialist with the community adults team, so got to work with a number of colleagues to support older adults and folks in transitional and supportive housing to access nourishing foods, be active, and help work towards their health and wellness goals.
Yeah, so I guess you left as soon as I got hired pretty much because I went into the community adults.
Oh,
As
yeah.
an AD, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, because that transition was, I guess it was a pretty new team at that point.
We did not have access to this beautiful conference room when I was there.
Yeah, since you're very familiar with our offices, this is a much better area to record than our actual offices.
So in your bio, we noticed that you do have experience in organization, food service, guideline policy. So we wanted to actually talk to you about the wellness policy. So I guess what is the importance of having an established wellness policy in an organization?
Yeah, for sure. So I think it's important that we first just set a baseline that probably all of your listeners can agree with us on, that nutrition is important, food's important, physical activity is important. It contributes to folks' overall health and well-being, how good they feel, their likelihood of developing food-sensitive chronic diseases or managing those diseases that they may already have. And we all care about food to some extent, right? Hopefully we all have most of us have the privilege of eating every day, and it impacts our life, our health, our well-being. So I think that's just an important precedent to set when we're talking about food, nutrition, physical activity, that type of policy. So beyond that, we also know that it is not just up to the individual to be able to access and consume those nourishing foods and be active on a regular basis. Our society as a whole has a main role to play in that. So, of course, that's our federal, our state, our local policies and our systems. That's our community. That's our culture. but that's also the organizations that are in our society. We interact with organizations on a daily basis, oftentimes many of them, and those organizations are largely feeding folks in different capacities. They're creating opportunities or not to be active and to access other health supports as well. So that's where organizational wellness policies can come into play. So a wellness policy is a way for the organization to walk the walk, depending on what they do, what their mission is, all of that good stuff. But it enables them to put their best foot forward to support their employees, their visitors, their clients, et cetera. Depends on the type of organization. But actually putting that time and thought and effort into establishing a policy as an organization has a number of benefits. It ensures that there is some consistency in how those supports are offered and applied across the population that the organization is serving. It helps to make sure that those benefits are reaching everybody and not just a subset of the population. If it's more of a one-off initiative or a time-bound initiative versus a whole policy. It also can help establish some confidence among the people interacting with that organization. Again, whether that be employees or clients or visitors or whatever the case may be. If you have a policy in place, especially a public-facing policy that's posted, shared, talked about, then folks know what they can expect from that organization. So that's a really important benefit too. It also can help align the organization with other things they have going on. Say they do educational programming or lead, fitness challenges or put up pretty pictures of fruits and vegetables, whatever the case may be. It can add some credibility and oomph behind those other initiatives and those parts of their mission as well. And I think really importantly is policies are, I think, our best bet to have a sustainable initiative. So oftentimes we'll see, you have an incredible champion come through who says we should do this, we should support our people in this way. They do really great work. And then for whatever reason, they're not able to carry that through, whether they leave the organization, their role shifts, their priorities shift. But when that person leaves, then the whole effort leaves. If you have a policy in place, that is something that should live with the organization instead of just living with that individual champion. And final piece I'll add is having a policy in place, again, especially a public-facing policy that the organization talks about, is you can be a model to others. So that's a very clear, established way of how the organization's going to support health that other people, other organizations can look to, learn from, and work off of as well. So you have the potential to have broader impact outside of the organizational walls.
I think I was reading somewhere that being able to have a policy also allows you to create a system, and both of them can go hand in hand. And then that's how you're able to have the long-lasting, health behavior change within that organization as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. It gives you a grounding on which to build other initiatives, systems, et cetera, off of a common place for us all to work from.
Yeah, I think for me, what is key is sustainability. Of course, like you just mentioned, worlds change, people change, and if it's just word of mouth, things change and your version of something is a different version of somebody else. Yeah. Their take on something is completely different than what you envision. So having something written down and have a concrete guideline is important. Not only within the policy stuff, but in general. If I don't write things down, I will forget. If I go to Target for milk, I'm gonna leave with some jeans. That section, Yeah. So it's just having that system or that policy, that guideline to just help you continue to sustain, to remember where you're supposed to be and get back on the path just in case, you jump off for whatever reason, or it just has to change or shift for whatever other reason. But yeah, sustainability, that's very important. Obviously.
I love that she touched on walk the walk. We were just talking about you practice where you preach, especially when you're in this field. You have all this information, and then sometimes to actually put it forth or actually use what you learn is very tough. So when you said walk the walk, is it wellness policy is the way an organization can actually walk the walk. Like we can talk about, we need to eat healthy, but if there's nothing in place, like what we're mentioning, then how are we able to walk the walk? How are employees able to, take you seriously, or the confidence that you spoke about?
And I love that you brought up too that accountability piece. I have seen that before, like especially food and nutrition.
Yeah.
Like because we all eat and because folks have, there's a lot of information, not all of it, great information out there about food and nutrition. So you'll see one person come through and be like, this particular fad diet works really great for me. Let's spread that everywhere. And that's maybe not what we want to be doing. So having that that thing that we can all rally around, a policy like you were saying, Cassandra, is I have seen it be very beneficial. We can say that actually this is what we agreed on as an organization. That's great. That works for you. Fantastic. Carry on. That doesn't need to be what we're all doing.
I also want to point out that you mentioned like inclusion, like making sure that it's not leaving some group out for whatever reason, or some people have access to some things that other people don't. So, and having the thing that is tougher to get your hands on, making that the main policy, then it's not going to actually help or reach out to everyone. So making sure it's accessible is important.
Yeah. So what are some things that can be covered underneath a wellness policy if an organization is trying to create that?
Great question. Fun answer. Anything you want. The nice thing about an organization creating their own wellness policy is it's meant to be developed by, tailored for, owned by that organization and the people that they serve. Yeah. So it should really be informed by, driven by the folks that are being impacted by that policy, which means it can house lots of different things. Like most of my background and experience is focused on food and nutrition and some physical activity and little bits of other pieces, but that doesn't mean that's we know that health and wellness is much broader than those two topics. So it can include access to external support resources, for example, depending on the populations that are being served and what they really want to see out of their organization. In the food and nutrition space, I've worked on policies that have talked about how the organization wants to get or procure their food. Often that gives an opportunity, again, like we said, to walk the walk. So food procurement can influence our broader food systems. So I've worked on policies where organizations will say, we are going to get at least half of our catering from small, local, BIPOC-owned food businesses. And that's going to be part of our wellness policy because that's not only procuring nourishing, culturally responsive food for the people we're serving, but it's supporting our values and our community as well. So I've seen the food procurement side, of course, also the food service side. So saying, say they have a cafeteria, being like, we're going to ensure that at least half of our grains are whole grains, and we're going to make sure there's a variety of fruits and vegetables, or we're going to serve meals that align with the cultural and religious needs and preferences of the people that we serve. Not everyone has a cafeteria. There'll also be policies that include like the snacks that we're leaving out for employees, or the vending machine in the lobby, or there's all sorts of different ways that foods are in our organizations, and those can all be included. And again, is the beauty of having an individual policy for an individual organization is that it can be tailored to that organization's needs.
Yeah.
On the physical activity side, again, totally depends on the organization, but could look like things around building activity breaks into meetings. I've seen policies of if our meeting's 60 minutes or more, we're going to have at least a 5 to 10 minute stretch break, movement break. If we're talking about workplaces, you can have an established policy that employees can and are encouraged to take movement breaks every hour or so, like get up, go outside. I've seen walking meetings before, rolling meetings before. There's ways you can build that into that support into the organizational structure.
Yeah. When today is, well, to the people listening, might be our like last day of recording. We were just like, we need to do something. But we were like, well, we're eatmovesave, so we have to have something healthy. So we were just like, okay, we'll just have like some fruits in the back. But that's also another way. And also, like, I guess, like an organization, if you do want to have those like walking meetings or those active breaks, that's where we could also come through. Maybe you don't want that on your, I guess, plate is too much, but like what we do is partner with different organizations in promoting the active breaks, the meeting breaks, or have those signs around the office to promote that wellness policy or to sustain it, as we've been talking about.
Or sometimes it just helps to have like a different influence there within the organization to be like, hey, do this, instead of just having maybe your boss tell you have to do this. If you have some other friendly faces come in, show you some fun ways or how it's not supposed to be like daunting or a burden, giving you some more information and context why this is important, might encourage more people to get involved. So absolutely there for you guys as well.
Incredible resource.
You mentioned that one way to build your first policies to make sure the people you're trying to build it for, they're there. So when you can't have everybody be in there, like, let's build a wellness policy. Who are the most important stakeholders, or how can you get that group to build that policy?
I had a flash image there of everyone you're trying to serve, trying to write a policy. We've got like 300 people in a room, all editing at the same time. Sometimes Stephanie cooks in the kitchen. Right. That's where that phrase comes from. So I think in an ideal world, one way building a policy can look is first you need a lead. You need someone who is willing to take the onus of bringing folks together, coordinating meetings, sending out minutes, following up with action items. You need that kind of coordinator, but that person's not necessarily driving the content. They should have a committee or group around them that brings in those diverse perspectives and skill sets. So I think in the best examples of building policies I've seen, we'll be able to put together a committee that has representation from all the different pieces of folks who are impacted. So that looks both internal and external. So if we're talking about, say, a food pantry, for example, then your committee may involve the food pantry coordinator, anyone who's responsible for procurement or purchasing for that pantry, a volunteer or two, and then pantry guests as well, who are all able to comment on how the pantry is operating and ideally how the pantry could be operating. And then I guess also some external folks would be good on there too. So if there are places where they're commonly getting food from, including their voices on the committee as well. And then that committee can take the next step of doing that broader engagement. So trying to get closer to what, we were joking about a minute ago, but one or two pantry guests cannot speak for all of the guests. So then thinking through what engagement strategy of that broader voice makes the most sense for us in our context. So I've seen all kinds of things. I've seen focus groups. I've seen surveys. I've seen like key informant interviews, just casual conversations of folks that are coming in and out. You hang out for a distribution or staff meeting or whatever the case may be and say, hey, like, what do you think about this? Switch it and just jotting down notes. And then that committee then can take all of that input and also take the best practices out there. You know, that's where to draw back to. There's lots of information out there about food, nutrition, physical activity. We want to make sure we're aligned with best practices so they can take those best practices, that science base, and then also integrate the needs and wants of the community to actually put pen to paper and start drafting something. And if I didn't say it, I should have said whoever's making that final decision as to whether the policy passes or not needs to be involved from the beginning too. This should not, the first time they see this, should not be when the draft is ready. In an ideal world, they're on the committee. They're there from the beginning, but we know sometimes schedules can be tough with that. So at least some regular checkpoints where they are bought into this process from the beginning is critical. And then you can also have those checkpoints with the committee and with the broader group at various stages. So say, hey, we heard your input XYZ. We tried to put it into this draft. Can you take a look at this draft? Does that reflect what y'all were trying to say? And then make any updates from there. So it's really all about finding a balance of building in as much of those diverse viewpoints as you can, making sure it aligns with the best science and practice base, and that all of those all-important viewpoints from both internal and external are represented.
Yeah, I think it's, like you were mentioning, having the viewpoints of the people who are actually going to get that on the other end or have to implement that themselves is important, because sometimes things sound very great on paper, but once you go and put it to action, it might not be the most practical or the easiest or the accessible. So just having those checkpoints, like you were mentioning, and making sure that each piece is kind of falling into place and not just individually in a different group and then trying to combine everything, it just makes things more complicated. A wellness policy is not supposed to make your life more complicated. It's supposed to make it easier. It's supposed to make choices easier, the healthy choices, the easy choices. That's what we're going for. So for sure, having those checkpoints with all those individual groups and different perspectives is needed.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Well said.
So when it comes to implementation, give us you sound. We know you have been building policies, but give us your personal experience when it comes to implementing a wellness policy. Unless maybe I heard wrong, but I heard you were somewhat involved in cphp first wellness policy. So could you give us a little background on how it was trying to start that wellness policy, the challenges, the success, what you would do different in terms of that?
Yeah. Happy to comment on CPHP specifically if you want, but maybe starting more generally. The implementation's the whole thing. Like sometimes it can be tempting to be like, we've passed our policy, we're done, that's it, we're golden. But that's that's phase one. Phase two is putting it into practice. I have found that implementation is most successful if you can really break it down into bite-sized chunks. So do not try to put the whole thing and you pass it on Monday and it's in practice on Tuesday. That is Here we go. Sorry. Go. Take that policy, chunk it out, and think about what are all the little steps that go behind each thing. So if we're saying that half of our grains are going to be whole, then where are we at now? We need to know where we're at now. And then think about who needs to do what to get towards that half of our grains being whole goal. So presumably some training is going to be needed to make sure that whoever's buying and preparing the grains knows what whole grains are, knows how to do that. So those are all steps that have to take place. So chunking that policy out into bite-sized pieces and figuring out who needs to know what in order to make that happen, and putting that into a work plan of sorts, an action plan, can be really helpful. And I think also starting off with that low-hanging fruit or those small wins to get that momentum going. It's totally fine and normal if some parts of the policy take 5 years to put into practice. I know that can feel, I don't know what the word is. That can feel some type of way to some folks, but the cool thing about policy is we are working towards structural organizational shifts, and that takes time. If we want to really make a change that really matters and will stick around, it's going to take time. It hopefully won't all take 5 years. Hopefully parts of it can be implemented on Tuesday and we can get those, those little wins right off the bat. But if you have something that you're making incremental progress towards, then you'll get there. You'll get there eventually. It'll feel manageable. It won't feel overwhelming and should not be held by one person.
I'm glad you mentioned the different timelines of things, because if you're somewhat like me, a little bit impatient, you'll think like, okay, within the few months, within a year max, everything is to be settled, right? Not everything is in the same timeline. Some things take a little more. It's just a different kind of progression, different aspects of policy. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because for sure I would have been like, okay, within the year for sure. This is on the
Well, if you've got a policy that's like, we're making a little tweak and maybe the organization's almost all the way to where they want to go already, and they're really just writing that down and formalizing it, then maybe we're putting it into place right away. But if you've got an organization that's really looking to shift their status quo, then you're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to be patient. And there's multiple people involved. And whenever there's multiple people involved, you can get more done, but it takes longer.
Yeah. And then I guess with a policy, it could be ongoing, right? I know we spoke about, you have it and then you implement it. But sometimes maybe when you implement, you realize maybe we need to go back and tweak something, right? That's something that's done, or something that is, I guess, current, or something that does happen when you're making a wellness policy.
Absolutely. Can and should.
Right.
Thank you for bringing that point up. Yeah, I think that's really, really important that folks don't feel like once that final signature goes on the policy, it is in a locked box, never to be touched again. It should be a living document, because yes, we all, we will realize things that were best intentions and just aren't going to work out as we planned. Or maybe we can make it even stronger. Maybe we were like, 50% whole grains is easy. Let's do 75. Right. We were already at 60, so why are we saying 50? So those things, as we're putting them into practice, can and should be updated. And then I always recommend that folks write into their policies a monitoring and updating plan. So I usually recommend every year that committee takes a look at that policy and has that checkpoint with the people they're serving and just saying, how is this working? Right. Is this still what we want to need? What kind of tweaks do we want to make so that it does continue to be both realistic and relevant and is pushing us forward?
Yeah.
Yeah, having that checkpoint to make sure that you have some kind of like way to check and see if it's still relevant or still important, because something that was accurate and good 10 years ago is not going to be the same now, especially with any kind of studies or any kind of evidence-based things that we know now. Maybe not the opposite, but there's might be a lot more updates, or let alone just the pandemic that happened. Like there's a lot of shifts that happened, and it's not like any of us predicted that we're just gonna.
I didn't.
Right. Yeah. So there is other adjustments to be made, which comes to kind of my other question I had. Some people, for whatever reason, may had a policy before, and now because of all the shift, other things took priority, and now is not as active as it was before. What are your thoughts, or what is your recommendation to kind of either revive it or start it all over or amend it?
Yeah, that happens. Policies go on the shelf sometimes, and the more you can from the outset have shared ownership and accountability over a policy, the less likely that is to happen. So if that's not sitting with that one person, but it's sitting, parts of it are sitting with lots of different people, then it's less likely to just be put on the shelf and forgotten about. But can still happen and can happen regardless. And when that happens, my recommendation would be to undertake a similar process, but probably an abridged version. So still having that person be the project manager for the update, but talking with some form of committee or checking with some different key folks to say, we created this policy some number of years ago. Can you look over it and let me know what parts are relevant and what parts aren't, how things have changed? Ideally, too, doing that checkpoint with the people that are being served to ask those same questions. So saying, if this is our goalpost, this 2-year-old policy, is that still a appropriate goalpost? And then having those folks make those updates, get it re-signed by the organizational lead, whoever, if that be an executive director, president, board chair, whatever the case may be, to have their sign off and that make that really official, show that this is something the organization does intend to stand behind. And then you need a new rollout plan, a new implementation plan, because it hadn't been implemented. Hopefully the organization had made some strides before it got put on the shelf, so you're not starting from scratch, but you're not starting from the end point either.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that, because even in nutrition, about things changing, even nutrition, how many times have we switched from the food pyramid to my plate? Like, it has been moving. But I really am interested in cphp wellness policy. If you could touch a little bit on that, how that started, or how we can even revive the policy here.
Because we're relevant, like kind of new,
Yeah.
newish.
Well, yeah, I'm under a year. So
Yeah.
Okay.
I started 2020.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
2
What a
weeks in, we went
time.
into lockdown.
Oh,
Yeah.
my
So I didn't get
gosh.
comfortable in my desk yet.
Yeah. All right. Well, interesting time.
Yes.
I was not the lead on that, but I was part of essentially the committee.
Yeah.
And it was a good process. I thought that we grounded it in national best practices of wellness policy. Different staff members took a look at resources out there and pulled out what they thought would be most workable for CPHP, given where the organization was at and what its mission was, and put together a policy as a whole. And I left right around when it was adopted, like maybe within a couple of days. So I can't really comment on the implementation of that and how that all went. You all would be better to speak to that.
Right.
It was, if I recall, very focused on being in-office staff. So I would imagine you all would want to take, not start from scratch because you have a thing to start from, but start with a very new reality in mind about staff being, being hybrid, being out in the community. But there are elements that are still the same, right? The mission is to support the health and well-being of the staff and the broader community, to walk that walk.
Yes.
So all of those things, I would imagine, can be a through thread.
I mean, and setting aside the CPHP policy, what kind of success stories have you come across, or is there any detail to a policy that you heard first somewhere and was a great idea to implement in other places? Any new things, or any kind of other tips you took from one organization to another just because it just sounded like a good practice?
Yeah, lots.
Share it, please.
I definitely learned things from every single organization I worked with. They were all in different places, at different missions, at different capacities. I worked with food pantries that were run by 2 volunteers, and that was a very different level of capacity, involvement, not sure what the right word is, something, than very large organizations like hospitals and food banks and that type of thing. So every organization was very, very different. One success story I can comment on is I worked for several years and actually need to reconnect with the Special Olympics Illinois. So they're a state level organization that is the Special Olympics organization for the state of Illinois, and they have a huge population of athletes, family members, coaches, volunteers, and other interested community members, and they give out a lot of food. They have a lot of events. They give out a lot of food, and they have a very particular population with specific health needs that they were wanting to serve. And we followed a very similar process to what I described. We had a committee that included athletes, that included guardians, had leadership involvement, and the committee worked so well together. Everyone had their own expertise and roles that they brought in. We were able to engage with different existing committees to get their insights, because that's where folks already were. There was a student committee that we got input from. There was different staff committees as well that we spoke with. And then we did a survey where we got, I can't remember the number, but definitely hundreds of responses from all across the Special Olympics Illinois spectrum. So we heard, from all of those populations and got very specific feedback about what types of foods and other food, nutrition, physical activity sort of supports they wanted from Special Olympics Illinois. And we're able to work as a committee to break down that feedback bit by bit by bit and actually put pen to paper to write that down. It had really strong shared ownership across the organization. So different people did have different parts. They actually started putting it into practice before it was even implemented. They shifted their meals that go out to thousands of athletes to be more nourishing. And one thing that was really lovely to see was the extremely strong support for the direction the group wanted to go. From that survey. We saw, I had never seen that high of agreement with different elements before. When you asked what sort of foods they wanted more of, they were like, more fruits, more vegetables, more no sugar items. And you don't always see that. Like, and it makes sense. It's it's an athletic community. But it was just a very inclusive process, and it was really great to see that shared ownership from start to finish. And another part that makes it feel like such a big success is the impact. It's going all across the state, and there are lots and lots of people that touch Special Olympics Illinois in some way or another.
Yeah, I would love to work with the Special Olympics Illinois. I recently this summer I went to go see their games because my godson participated in the 100-meter dash.
Wow.
Yeah, we were so proud of him. But it's a big organization. There's so many things undertaking. So just knowing that you had like some kind of hand in that, or was able to like help them out, it's wonderful, because those participants, the kids, the families, they truly are there to participate, to appreciate, to help one another. So it's a great community.
Yeah. How did he do?
He did great. He did second in the 100-meter dash.
Second. Okay.
Very proud of Andy.
Go Andy. Shout out.
Yeah. So yeah, it's an organization I hold dear to my heart as well, because having extracurricular things other than school and stuff, it's important as well.
Oh, very cool. Well, congrats to Andy.
So it seems like the running theme of a wellness policy is being inclusive. Having so many different people, not so many different people, but having different voices on the table. So if someone in the audience is listening, is like, I would love to partner with Kathryn, because she's just spoke so well about the wellness policy, and I want to see how it is to work with them. Where can they reach you? Services, any websites, social media pages, or anything you would like to promote in general?
Sure. Totally can share my email. That's the best way. It's kathryn.bernstein at iphionline.org. And then our website is iphionline.org. Those are probably the best places to find us. We also are on LinkedIn, IPHI, Illinois Public Health Institute. Those are all good spots. And I know a few things, but my colleagues know lots, so very possible I will be reconnecting folks with others, but always happy to have anyone reach out anytime.
And thank you so much. And I think that's also one of the driving point is, giving resources and connecting people, the audience, to different resources in Chicago. So thank you so much for taking the time here to speaking to us about the wellness policies first, just having the conversation in general.
Thanks for listening to Healthier Habits with your hosts, Cassandra Zumba
And Diakwachi.
We hope you enjoyed this conversation. Keep an eye out for more episodes and make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell.
Here at CPHP, we have the eatmovesave meal kit. This is an e-commerce project dedicated to improving and resolving access to healthy and affordable foods through a meal kit, which is packaged and delivered directly to a family's home throughout Chicago through Typebox. Visit our eatmovesave website for more information on meal kit ordering and delivery.
You can help support the podcast by liking, sharing, and subscribing, following us on our social media accounts on Instagram as eatmovesave Chicago, Facebook eatmovesave Chicago, and YouTube as UIC OceanhP. Look for the podcast tab for more episodes.
If you'd like more information on partnering with our organization, head over to our website, cphp.uic.edu, and send us a message.
Thank you for joining this chat. Check out our links and resources in the description. See you next time.
Bye.
This institution is an equal opportunity provider. This material is funded by the USDA Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP. Chicago Partnership for Health Promotion is a unit of the Office of Community Engagement and Neighborhood Health Partnerships, representing a network of community-based interventions designed to improve nutrition and reduce disparities in outcomes associated with nutritional diseases, including obesity. CPHP provides high-quality, age, gender, and culturally tailored nutrition education in various venues across the city.
Eat, Move, Save.